Foundry VTT is constantly getting new modules, but how do you know which ones to check out? That's where I come in. This video is here to show you 10 interesting Foundry VTT modules ranging from a 3D card viewer to a better D&D rest mechanics handler. I'll give you an overview of each module and how they work. And stick around for the last one because it's a module that will make your maps look sharper and more crisp. Hi, it's me, FOUNDRY, your Foundry VTT wizard. I have over 400 hours using Foundry and I want to show you how to get the most out of Foundry VTT. If that sounds like your thing, hit that subscribe button down there to get my latest videos. Before we jump into the list, I have a few important things to mention that you should hear. First, I'm using the latest stable release of Foundry version 11, so I cannot promise that all of the modules presented in this video work with Foundry version 10 or older. Some do, but some don't, so I recommend using version 11. Second, links to all the modules shown in this video can be found in the description box below. Third, remember to activate your modules in the game worlds you want to use them in, otherwise they won't work. With those three things out of the way, let's draw the first module from the list. Having a deck of cards in Foundry VTT is a pretty bare bones experience. Click a button to draw a card or deal a hand, and then the only thing you get is a message in chat and a separate sheet where you can see your list of cards. Very meh. That all changes with a module called Card Viewer. Card Viewer adds a gorgeous 3D card viewer to all of your cards, meaning that you can now view each card full screen and flip the card between the card art and the stats side. You can even share cards with your players so they too can see cards represented in this beautiful 3D viewer. The module works with drawing single cards or even with dealt hands, and the module's developer Orknog was kind enough to include macros for drawing a card, viewing a card, and viewing an image as a card. With these macros, you'll have an easier time working with cards in general. Granted, you will have to fiddle a bit with the macros to make sure it knows which card stack to use. I can imagine card games and different card-based activities becoming a lot more immersive inside Foundry thanks to this module. I wish I would have found Card Viewer a few months ago, as it would have been perfect for the card reading in Cursive Straw that my players went through. It would have been so cool to show them all their cards in this cool 3D viewer. Oh well. There's always a next time. Now that we have a great way to bring cards to life in Foundry, let's talk about bringing custom spells and stat blocks over to the VTT. This next one is actually going to include two modules because they are very similar in nature but just handle different parts of importing data for D&D 5e. 5e Statblock Importer allows you to import monster or NPC stat blocks easily with the click of a button. To do this, click the new button at the bottom of your Actors tab called Import Statblock, and then copy and paste the Statblock info into the new window that opens up. Then select which folder you would like the actor in and press Import. Now the module creates an actor for you with all of the stat block information populated into the actor sheet. How neat! One important thing to note is that the stat block you are copying from should be formatted using the standard WotC layout. 5e Spellblock Importer essentially does the same thing, but for spells and items. In your Items tab, you will now have a Import Spell button, and the flow of importing is exactly the same as with 5e Statblock Importer. Just copy-paste the spell or item stat block into the import window, select if it's an item or a spell. This step is important, so don't skip it, and then just hit Import. These modules aren't perfect, however, and they might miss data sometimes, but it's definitely faster than just manually putting each data point one at a time. These modules are great for people who use a lot of third-party content that isn't Foundry ready, or for those who are big into homebrewing and want to bring that stuff over to Foundry. Let's hop on over to the next module, which is also a 2-for-1. Whenever you're adding a map asset to Foundry, don't you hate it if you have to manually align the grid with the map? It's so frustrating. Luckily, Grid Scaler and Quick Grid Align both make this a lot easier. Grid Scaler gives you a brand new tool which allows you to either draw a single square or hex and then have the grid size match it, or to draw a 3x3 grid square on the map and have the grid match it. You can also manually set the grid size by entering the number of horizontal grid spaces across the map. Quick Grid Align, on the other hand, lets you count the number of horizontal and vertical squares or hexes in your image, and it will then align the grid based off this information. Alternatively, you can also use this module to click on 2 points on the grid to measure the length of a single cell, and the module will then align the whole grid with the map. Tools like this that make setting up your maps characters, etc. are big productivity boosts, and I love that. I know these two tools are similar, but I feel like picking one over the other comes down to personal preference, which is why I wanted to include both. The decision is yours. Since we're on the topic of maps, let's talk about making doors more exciting in Foundry. Perceptive adds a simple but impactful change to Foundry. You can now slide open doors. In Foundry Core, a door can either be fully open or closed. It's binary, unlike gender. But with this module, you can now slowly, or quickly I guess, slide the door open with your scroll wheel. This allows you to peek into part of the room without necessarily being detected. Another neat thing Perceptive adds is the ability to peek through lock holes to give you a small view of the room on the other side. You can do this by Control plus right-clicking on a door. Perceptive also has a few other features like camera token following and spotting hidden doors and tokens, but I'm focusing on the doors for now. So, your players can slowly inch a door open to tensely reveal what is on the other side of the door. Now your Foundry doors are truly exciting. On the topic of your players, this next module is to help your players with their Foundry settings. Have you ever had a player who doesn't quite know their way around the Foundry settings, or maybe you just want to set up the settings for a new module you installed for all your players to make sure it's a-okay? Well, Monk's player settings will help you out. This module allows you to set the settings of each of your players with your player account so they don't need to jump into the settings themselves. You do this by changing the player name in the new drop-down list that's been added to the Configure Game Settings window. Once you edit the settings for a player and save, the settings will immediately be applied if the player is online or be applied the next time they log in if they are offline. The module also keeps your own settings synced between different browsers. Monk's player settings will keep a copy of the most recent settings that were saved, and upon switching to a different browser will prompt you to sync with those saved settings. I can definitely see this being super useful for helping less technical players or for setting things up for a whole new campaign. The next module is also a fantastic tool for GMs that will make their life easier. One Journal Handouts gives GMs an easy way to share handouts with players. Normally, GMs need to create a separate player handouts journal entry and then share each page in that entry as the players discover them. With this module, you instead share pages from your handout journal entry with the click of a button, and it then gets added to a separate player handout journal. This way, the player handout journal will get populated with the handout pages as they discover them, and you will save yourself a few clicks. I know this seems like a minor module to highlight, but anything that increases the GM's efficiency in using Foundry, even if it's just a few clicks, is beneficial in my opinion. So now you can share handouts with just the click of a button. You know what else is just a click of a button? Subscribing to this channel and liking the video. If you're enjoying this video, consider doing those things since they help this video reach more people and they don't cost you a dime. Next, let's talk about the UI of Foundry VTT and how you can make it less intrusive. Minimal UI gives you a bunch of options to make it so that there are less Foundry UI elements on the screen at all times. One of the big features of this module, no pun intended, is the ability to change the size of your left-hand tool and your scene navigation buttons at the top of the screen. You can also make it so that the left-hand tool buttons, the macro bar, and the player list are hidden by default and only appear if you hover your mouse over them. To top that off, this module also allows you to completely hide the Foundry logo in the top left-hand corner or to change it to an image of your choosing. This module will allow you to have a very minimal UI if you want to, or you can just hide or minimize the parts that you feel are being an eyesore. I know for some people, especially newcomers, Foundry can feel overwhelming with all of its different UI elements, so this module can give you a chance to lessen that burden just a little bit. Now then, it's time to let your players have a breather and improve their D&D resting experience in Foundry. By default, resting in D&D with Foundry Core is a bit clunky, especially when it comes to recovering HP during short rests. With Rest Recovery, a whole new UI window is added to the resting flow, which gives a whole bunch of options. This new window gives an easy way to select how many hit die the player wants to use when recovering HP during a short rest, letting the player choose which spell slots to recover with Arcane Recovery, handling a Bard's Song of Rest, and much more. Rest Recovery even lets you have a bunch of optional features and works with custom rules. Honestly, this module is very versatile, so I highly recommend checking out their documentation to see all the different elements that you can tweak. Like for example, the module will take the chef durable, and tough feats into account when recovering hit points through resting. No more will you have to manually take care of all the rest-related mechanics because rest recovery has got you covered. Next, let's talk about one of my favorite Foundry topics: animations. If there's one thing I love adding to my Foundry games, it's animations. I just love having animated effects for spells, attacks, items, etc. And with universal animations, you can take this even further. This module works together with JB2A's animations and adds animations that play automatically for all rolled items based on item properties. The module also dynamically changes the color of the animation based on the item properties, such as spell school and damage flavor, and the module plays different animations for hits and misses, damage on critical attacks, and failed versus successful saves. And lastly, animations could have multiple steps, meaning that a spell could have an animation for when the spell is cast, for the attack roll, and then for the damage roll, and all these animations play in the proper order. Universal animations will create such a cool and flashy experience using Foundry. I know you might be worried about compatibilities like for MIDI QOL, for example. Don't know what MIDI QOL is or how it works? Check out my comprehensive tutorial on the module, which you can find linked in the description box below and in the top right-hand corner of the screen right now. So, Universal Animations works with MIDI QOL, automated animations, D&D 5e animations, and Chris's pre-mades. So, no worries. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about how we can make your Foundry maps look more crisp. This module's name is a mouthful: Foundry VTT Scene Image Interpolation Settings. Whew. The name sounds big and scary, but what it essentially does is give you the option to adjust settings that can make your Foundry maps look more crisp and sharp. The module allows you to adjust the scene background and foreground image interpolation and MIP map settings of your own client. It's important to note that these settings are per client, so each user will have to adjust them. Unless, of course, you're using Monk's player settings, which I mentioned earlier, then you can do it for players. Normally, Foundry opts for a more smooth look for the maps, but with this module, you can go for the pixel perfect settings, which will give it a more crisp look. I was quite surprised by how clear the difference is, although a word of warning: for some maps, this sharpness can feel a little too jarring and can be a bit too strenuous for the eyes. I recommend playing around with the settings with a few different maps to see how it feels for you. There you have it, another 10, well technically 12, modules to make your Foundry games even more impressive. Let's summarize the modules just for clarity. Card Viewer gives you a stunning 3D card viewer to properly appreciate your cards in Foundry. 5e Statblock Importer and 5e Spellblock Importer allow you to import stat blocks and spell blocks respectively with the click of a button. Grid Scaler and Quick Grid Align give you various tools to quickly align your map with the grid. Perceptive allows you to slowly open doors and peek through keyholes. Monk's player settings gives you the power to change your players' settings for them. Journal Handouts lets you share handout journal pages with one button. Minimal UI gives you options to hide and minimize the Foundry UI so it feels less cluttered. Rest Recovery provides a powerful new window to take care of all the rest-related mechanics in D&D, so you don't have to do things manually anymore. Universal Animations adds new automated animations to your spells and items with automatic color changes and different animations for different steps. Foundry VTT Scene Image Interpolation settings allows you to have more crisp and sharp looking maps. What did you think about all these modules and which ones are you going to try? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this. While you're down there commenting, I would also ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Those two actions are the best way to support this channel for free. I also stream every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern European Standard Time, which is 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/diceandeasy. Link to that is also in the description below. On the screen right now, you're going to see a video of mine where I interviewed the creator of Foundry VTT. We talked about the upcoming features of Foundry version 12 and what most people don't know about this VTT. Check it out, it's a real deep dive. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.